Good afternoon. So I'm doing this a little bit different than I typically do. And so I'm going to broadcast this live. So this public hearing will start at 1 p.m. approximately. At that time, I'll be able to share the screen, which basically will pull up everything so we can watch the hearing. We can kind of see what's happening inside the room and we can discuss it. And so we can all pay attention to what's happening. And so good job on the testimony. We had a lot more testimony in opposition for Senate Bill 1503. So that was good. That was a good move. And from what I scrolled through there, and from what I saw, there was only a few people that were actually in support of 1503, which is good. And I think that helps our case here. And so once this thing gets going, we'll broadcast it and then we'll kind of so my comments are going to be a little bit different today because I don't have a screen dedicated to Facebook. So I can't see what's happening. So if you guys make comments, it's going to show up on one side and I'll be able to highlight them. If we have questions, we can kind of talk about those. I'm just gonna, I want to make this kind of a platform for us to kind of see all the information in real time. And then I'm going to be taking notes. Other people, if they're watching this at home or at the office, if there's anything that you want to, circle back on, we can do that. And so, thanks for tuning in. And so, a couple things to worry about is obviously the funding, right? So $400,000. I'm curious to see where this money is going to come from for this actual quote unquote task force. I'm seeing that the budgets are, they're asking for different things in the legislature this year. Obviously the fire response. So obviously they're not as fiscally strong as they're making it out to be. So I don't see why we're wasting $400,000 just to develop this task force. Okay, so I'm suspicious of that. So I'm hoping once this thing gets going that you guys will be able to see kind of the way the process works. There's probably going to be I'm not typically what they'll do is they'll alternate, so they'll have uh, somebody that's in opposition go first, and then they'll have somebody that goes in support of the measure, and they alternate typically. Um, So you'll be able to kind of see the typical talking points that they're going to be using. One of the ones that I noticed in some of the testimony is, they're talking about gun violence, yada yada yada. That's their typical talking points. They did bring in some of the support testimony. Is there were some pediatricians and they were talking about how firearms are the leading cause of death for children, which is categorically false. And I could push back on that. It's just they're using the same talking points all across the country, the same narrative. I'm not sure if it's coming from every town or Moms Demand Action, but there's probably a good chance of that. So it's just something to be aware of. So I'm hoping this thing gets going. Hope everybody's having a good day. I'm not seeing any comments. I don't know if you guys are commenting or if you guys are seeing this, but I appreciate you guys tuning in. And I'm still dealing with the cold, which is not fun. It's been like 10 days now. So I'm over it. So, but that's kind of where we're at, so we're going to have the hearing today. I did send an email today to find out if this thing's been scheduled for a work session. Okay. Cause this thing, because we're in a short session this year. Because the way it basically alternates every year. So we'll have a long session is going to be next year. This session is going to be a short session, and so they have to have everything has to. Thank you for doing that. So I appreciate you tuning in. And so the way it works is, so this is a short session. So this thing, if this is going to get out of this committee, which it's starting off in the Senate Committee on the Judiciary, if it's going to get out of this committee, it has to be scheduled for a work session by Monday. That's the typical deadline for this stuff. And so what that means is they could schedule it for a work session. They could push it out to towards the end of the session, which end of the session is going to be March 10th tentatively. And thank you guys. I appreciate it. And so, all they have to do is schedule this for a work session. This thing's going to get out of this committee and then it'll go into the system and it'll be moving on. Okay? So, with that, what it would do is it would have to go to the work session. There would have to be recommendations, whether on how to fix it or, and then it would have to go to the Senate floor for an entire, vote on the Senate. And then it would go over to the House side and it would go through the same process in theory. And then there might be some changes on the House side, and then, if it were to pass there, then it would be passed both chambers, then it would go to the governor for the signature. And so that's kind of where we're at. And so as soon as this thing, so 12:59, I'm hoping it starts on time and I'm hoping it broadcasts. This is another thing. I'm hoping this works, but it was in recess when I tried it earlier, so it wouldn't allow me to click in. So I'm hoping once it's active and they'll give me a little active like a play, I'll click on there and I'll be able to bring it up on my screen. And so that's what I'm hoping is going to do. It's going to work. And so thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. And this is part of the process. This is part of you guys being, you know, part of the this process at the state level. You have to understand who our representatives, who our senators are, and obviously I've got two senators from my area. One of them, Floyd Prozansky, he's my senator and he's the chairman of this committee, so a staunch anti 2A guy. And, reasoning with him is like reasoning with a fence post, and it doesn't go over well. And very, very much be careful with my words. Very much a small man's complex. Very much, I'm not sure if he's going to be wearing a mask. He's typically last year was the only one in the building wearing a mask. So that tells you a lot about who he is as a person. So, you know, I'm sure some people love him. I'm not a fan. I don't feel that he speaks for all of his constituents. I believe that he caters definitely to people that like to violate our freedoms and our rights. So, that's all I'll say about him. So, thanks for tuning in. I'm still waiting for that play. Once it hits play, we will start this up. And I'm not sure how long it's going to last. They might give us an hour, So if you guys, yeah, yeah, um, yeah, he's deeply entrenched, and that's where it would be really great for us to get somebody from Eugene that could replace him, and so it just takes people stepping forward. We had a lady last year that ran against him, Raquel, very nice lady. I'm not sure she's be interested in doing it again, but so yeah, it's kind of he's not the most popular in the building from what I hear as well, just because of he doesn't work well with others and very much kind of an iron fist type guy. So you know, and come on guys, let's get this thing started. And so hope everybody's having a good day. And we're going to watch this and we'll be able to kind of talk about it and we'll kind of be able to diagnose it in real time, which will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see everybody's thoughts on some of the stuff that we see. And I'm hoping the audio works. Like there's a lot of things that I have, that I don't know about. So I'm hoping this works out the way I envisioned it. So thank you for tuning in. So I'm going to refresh and see what happens here. I should have give me 1 second. Now we have public hearing Scheduled on 2/7. Proposed staff. Come on. So one thing I did notice about this stuff is there were high school students that were in the testimony here. There were also college students, you know what I mean? So, they're basically taking away the voice of your kids, you know what I mean? So, that's kind of a part of the problem here. So, let's see. We got public hearing. Let's go. And it's not letting me do it. Come on. Still in recess. Okay. Phew, I'm seeing it's still in recess. So hopefully as soon as this thing comes live, we will, you know, get this thing up and going. So thanks for tuning in. Give me just a second. Once this thing gets going, then we'll be able to broadcast it. But you'll look at this. You'll look at this. This is all the testimony here, right? So these are the all the guys is, oppose, which is really, really good. And then we started seeing, support. The support, really isn't that many people in support, which is a good thing for us. And I'm hoping that, this thing goes. I don't know why you would be neutral. Yeah. Okay. So one thing about testimony, and I don't want to drive the bus over this guy too much, but it's really, really important is when we're submitting testimony here, and I'm gonna close this out, is you have to click either an opposition or support. If you put neutral, they're just gonna scroll on by and they're not gonna count you. So he had, a good thought in his testimony, but the problem is he marked the box neutral, so they're gonna say that he was not either in opposition or support of the bill. So that's, just something you'll learn as you get more understanding of this process. And yeah, right here. I can't see who's posting stuff, comments, unfortunately, right? But this, we're gonna have a short session. Okay, so we're not gonna have a lot of time, and once this thing goes through, then it's going to be important that it's going to be a mad scramble, because they have all these other bills that they have to see. So, I'm hoping that, this is okay. So now live content. Let's go. Big bucks, no whammies. Okay. Here we go. Let's see if this works. Can you guys hear that? Give me a sound check, please.
Violence and suicide prevention. Staff by the Oregon Health Authority. There is a -3 amendment on OLIS that replaces the measure. It establishes the task force on community.
Can you guys hear me? Sound check.
Suicide prevention.
Okay, perfect.
Staff by the Department of Justice.
All right, this is gonna be fun.
From the Senate, one from the minority party, appointed by the Senate President, who are non-voting. 2 members from the House.
Okay, perfect. So I'll kind of just I'll keep my thoughts to myself for right now until we see stuff that's kind of good and bad. We'll do like a play-by-play. So this will be fun. We'll do it live. So stand by.
Related to public health best practices for reducing deaths from community safety threats and for suicide prevention. It permits the task force to contract with third parties to research those issues. It directs the task force to submit reports to the interim legislative committees related to healthcare by September 15th, 2024 and September 15th, 2025. It appropriates $400,000 from the general fund to the Department of Justice to fund the research ordered by the task force. It sunsets the measure at the end of 2026 and takes effect on the 91st day following sunny day.
All right, thank you.
So there's no emergency clause, which is a good thing.
Kicking us off.
I'd be very happy to, Mr. Chair. And I will stick to my 3 minutes and you can ring the bell. So
We'll let Google do that.
okay, well, Chair Przonski, Vice Chair Thatcher, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, thank you so much for having me. I'm State Senator Rob Wagner. I represent.
Oh my gosh. Look at the red shirts.
To be able to be with you.
That's so strategic.
And to be able to speak to Senate Bill 1503 and specifically the -3 amendment, the Community Safety and Firearms Suicide Prevention Task Force. This bill is a crucial next step in overcoming stigmas around mental health care,
Absolutely.
supporting our neighbors who are most vulnerable and saving lives from firearm suicides. We know that suicide rates have increased across the country since the COVID-19 pandemic. In Oregon, firearms are involved in more than half of suicides each year. According to the OHA, this is 42% higher than the national average, with veterans, men, and people over 75 at particular risk. Our hope is to include a broad range of stakeholders on this task force and couple it with additional allocation that was mentioned for third-party research. We can build on the successes of Senate Bill 52 from 2019, ADDIES Act, which works with school districts on suicide prevention, and Senator Hansel's Agri-Stress Helpline, which was passed this last year, by identifying best ways to support Oregonians and prevent these tragedies. Before turning it over to my colleague, Senator Hansel, and the experts who are here today, I'd like to briefly highlight a couple of the changes that are reflected in the -3 amendment. First, we've expanded the task force to include representation of those on the ground and that are most impacted, including a youth-focused psychologist, a veteran services professional, a representative of a community-based firearm safety program, a law enforcement officer, and a tribal behavioral health representative. Secondly, we added in more specificity in the questions we want to have the task force look into, including the intersection of domestic violence and community violence. The task force will report back to the legislature annually until it is sunset in 2026 so that we as a body can consider the recommendations. At the end of the day, colleagues, this is a task force bill. If we at the legislature want to take on this challenge and support vulnerable Oregonians at risk from suicide, then we know what we are the most effective, data-informed, and proven steps that we can take. I hope we can garner your support for Senate Bill 1503 with the -3 amendment, and it's a great honor to have my Senate colleague here joining me at the testimony table today.
So I'm trying to just listen without interrupting. There's be some things I will keep you up to speed on as we go on.
Committee members, I'm Senator Bill Hansel, representing Senate District 29, which includes Wallowa, Union, Umatilla, Morrow, Gillum, Sherman, most of Wasco, parts of Jefferson, Clackamas, and Marion counties, for a total of 17,000 square miles. I'm here with my colleague, Senate President Wagner, to support Senate Bill 1503 with the -3 amendments. This bill is a framework for the task force that will give recommendations on community safety and firearm suicide prevention, i.e. a task force which will be staffed by the Department of Justice. Senate President Wagner has worked with my office on elements of this bill with the goal of putting together a task force to help with suicide prevention, something I care deeply about. In 2023, I was chief sponsor of Senate Bill 955, more commonly known as the Agri-Stress Helpline in Oregon. This hotline is implemented by Oregon State University partner to ag families. The Agri-Stress was a program started in other states and now Oregon, with the addition to Colorado, Connecticut, Missouri, Montana, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, Washington, and Wyoming. I come from a family of farmers. Agriculture is the #1 industry in my district. Farming, ranching, fisheries, forestry, etc. These are folks, regrettably, with some of the highest suicide rates nationally. These are the types of solution I hope the task force will pursue. Look to solutions that have been implemented in other states. In the -3s, I really like the emphasis on veterans and first responders. That's key. They are very similar to farmers in many ways. My only suggestion would be that we might also want to include faith-based organizations have a representative on them that are active in this area because we have a lot of expertise there as well. I have signed on as the chief sponsor of Senate Bill 1503 with my colleague, Senator Wagner. Thank you, and I urge your support and be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Colleagues, any questions for the senators?
I do actually have one.
Please.
It's in the name, the task force on, on community safety is in there, and that just blows. I mean, there's so much that could be in that. Is that defined? I guess it's defined by the tasks you were tasking the task force with.
Yeah, Chair Przonski, Senator Thatcher, Vice Chair Thatcher. I think there was some sensitivity around the initial name around gun violence, and so the intention is to actually look at what are we empowering the task force to do. So it's really focusing on what is the broad array of community safety measures that we can take. But really, it's looking at suicide prevention is the core focus of the task force.
Yeah, and from my perspective, this makes it a larger umbrella. And where you may have firearms as a means for committing suicide, there's multiple other ways that unfortunate task can be completed. And so I would hope that the task force will also be looking at those broader other points of concern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I may add too, just I've got the -3s right in front of me in section 1.1. The task force on community safety and firearms suicide prevention is established. Suicide prevention.
My question's on the computer. Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Again, gentlemen, thank you very much. All right, so we're just as planned. We're going to have enough time to get everyone in. So I'm going to ask even those that are within this panel to limit your remarks to 3. If you hear a little Google ding, that means you've hit 3 minutes. So I've got Kimberly McCullough, and she's here. Yeah, and then we also, just for purposes of who's coming up next, we will have 3 individuals that will be virtual. Dr. Zanlanka will be our next one, and then followed by Dr. Carlson. So Kimberly, if you'll go next.
Chair Przonski, Vice Chair Thatcher, members of the committee. I'm Kimberly McCullough. I'm the Legislative Director at the Oregon Department of Justice. I just wanted to let the committee know that we are happy to be the home for this task force. And it intersects with a number of different things that we're working on. We have a grant program related to community violence prevention, which has intersection with this work. And then we've also, I know that extreme risk protection.
Then why don't you fund it yourself then if you have a grant?
The subject matter that'll be discussed, our team has done a lot of work in that area and research, and we have expertise. So the Attorney General just wanted me to let you all know she's happy to have our office do this work.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions?
This should tell you a lot right here.
Go to Dr. Zanlanka. I believe he will be virtual. Doctor?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to testify today. My name is Michael Zalanka, Zalanka. I am a psychiatrist with a level 1 trauma center in Portland, Oregon. I work in a consultative capacity. I see individuals who are admitted with medical issues who also have psychiatric needs. I also serve as the medical director at that facility. I'm testifying today on behalf of the Oregon Psychiatric Physicians Association in support of Senate Bill 1503, which would establish the Community Safety and Firearms Suicide Prevention Task Force. I'm excited and honored to be invited to testify on behalf of this task force, which would examine barriers to reducing gun violence and firearms suicide in the state of Oregon. In Oregon, over 50% of suicides that are successful are due to firearms, and our suicide rate in the state is at least 40% higher than the national average. Firearms are unfortunately uniquely effective and lethal as a means of suicide. Suicide attempts by firearm have an 85% fatality rate, which contrasts with other means of attempted suicide, which typically have rates in the single digits. Working in a consultative psychiatric capacity at my hospital, over the last 10 years, I've been involved in at least 100 cases of individuals who have survived their suicide attempt by firearm. Representatives of that 15% who happen to survive and have had chance to talk with and counsel numerous family members, friends, and other members of the community who have been affected by this. In engaging with those patients and family members, I've witnessed their distress, their suffering, and their grief. I've helped individuals who have survived their suicide attempts come to terms with the disfigurement and disability that invariably comes along with these tragic attempts. I've also assessed and treated victims of gun violence, including those who have been affected by domestic violence. And I have tried to help with the impact of the trauma they've experienced, as well as their disability and difficulty with adaptation, returning to their previous roles, which sometimes is simply not possible. As well, I also should point out that within the past several months, there was a very tragic case of a security staff at my hospital who died as a consequence of gun violence. A visitor in the hospital brought a firearm into the facility and tragically ended that individual's, that brave staff member's life. I know that we as medical and health professionals and as a community can and should be doing more to try and understand how to prevent these. The bill before us today would definitely help mental health providers, law enforcement, community stakeholders, and lawmakers understand the factors that lead to firearms violence and find means to help mitigate this. The Oregon Psychiatric Physicians Association supports this bill, and we urge the community to pass this legislation. Thank you, President Wagner, Chair Brzezinski, Vice Chair Thatcher, and members of the committee.
All right, thank you for your testimony, Doctor. We're going to go ahead and go to our next.
That's a good comment there.
And this will be Dr. Kathleen Carlson. Dr. Carlson?
So remember when I was at the VA a couple months ago? This is the lady that had me there. So this should be interesting.
My name is Kathleen Carlson. I'm an injury epidemiologist and professor of public health at the OHSU PSU School of Public Health, where I teach and conduct research on injury and violence epidemiology and all things prevention related. I'm leading a diverse and skilled team of researchers at our newly formed OHSU Gun Violence Prevention Research Center, the primary goal of which is to serve as a credible and objective source of data for gun violence and its solutions in our state.
Yes, typically.
And to contribute nationally to the science of firearm injury prevention. I'm here to express my support for Senate Bill 1503, and I'm pleased to also be authorized to also express the institutional support of OHSU. This bill is forward-looking in establishing a task force on gun violence and suicide prevention and directing it to identify effective interventions, new advancements, evidence-based practices and policies, and the barriers to their implementation. I'd like to briefly share some of the research we are involved in at our Gun Violence Prevention Research Center to illustrate the value and the need for research on firearm violence and suicide, how it informs effective solutions and the implementation of those solutions, and how it gives us hope that we can and we are beginning to effectively address the firearm injury epidemic in Oregon. At our center, we're working to fully understand the burden of the firearm injury epidemic in our state and identify the circumstances that put people at risk of firearm homicide and suicide. Working in collaboration with the Oregon Health Authority, we've been able to, for the first time, use our state's health monitoring systems to generate reliable data on non-fatal firearm injuries suffered by Oregonians throughout the state. And our mapping of these non-fatal injury data, and especially when combined with fatal injury data by county, has helped us identify those counties with the highest numbers and rates of firearm injuries. Because when we know the full burden of the firearm injury epidemic and recognize that firearm deaths are only the tip of the iceberg, our solutions can be informed by a more complete picture of the firearm injury problem. Researchers at our center who are trained in evaluation are evaluating the implementation and effectiveness of Healing Hurt People, which is a hospital-based violence intervention program
Absolutely correct.
at OHSU and 2 legacy sites by the Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center.
It's all about money.
This program provides trauma-informed social and emotional services to young men of color who are the victims of shootings. because when we better understand the barriers to the implementation of evidence-based programs like Healing Her People, we can better work to surmount them and then maximize effectiveness. Similarly, when we better understand the complexity of the gun violence problem and identify upstream risk factors or the root causes of the problem, we can more effectively address it. We've also been conducting an analysis of ERPO petitions.
Are you hearing this? This is
Petitions
insane.
filed in Oregon from 2018.
This is
and all but
insane.
implemented through 2022 to determine the frequency of ERPO use, petitioner characteristics.
They're not talking about prosecution. They're not talking about strengthening gun laws that are already in the books. They're talking about reinventing the wheel because now they have a platform to do it.
We're specifically examining petitions that were filed to
Unreal.
prevent firearm suicide. Because when we conduct analyses of how our state laws are being implemented and utilized, we learn how to improve their ultimate effectiveness.
All about control.
Last
Absolutely.
but not least,
She's done.
Okay,
Pull the
you said
plug.
those famous words, last but not least.
or okay, in closing, how about those? I want to thank the committee for its
Thank you,
consideration
Prozansky.
of the bill. I thank you as an injury epidemiologist who feels fortunate to have the opportunity to do the work that we're doing to address our state's firearm injury epidemic. And I also thank you as a lifelong Oregonian who grew up in small town Bonita with a family that used a variety of firearms for sustenance, hobby, and personal protection. But
I'm a gun owner, but you can't have any.
Who died almost 11 years ago now from firearm suicide in his little retirement home in Sweet Home, Oregon.
Here's a bias.
So personally and professionally, I'm dedicated to producing science that can help us inform a balance between the need to retain individual rights while minimizing these preventable deaths and injuries. So thank you very much, and please consider our center a resource to inform your firearm-related policy decisions.
All right, thank you. We have
No.
one question, and just as a reminder for everyone, the testimony we're taking today is just the beginning as for the task force. We'll be meeting, the task force will, and taking up these in much detail, but Senator,
Thatcher, it's okay.
I
I just have a question. It sounds like you've done a lot of research. Where would we find this? You said the center and I missed the name of it. What is that again?
We have a Center for Gun Violence Prevention Research at OHSU. And if
That's
you
funded by Biden.
Gunviolenceprevention.ohsu.edu will get you into our resources. We also have a dashboard that presents the data on those non-fatal firearm injuries in counties across the state. And then our colleagues at the Oregon Health Authority also have dashboards that present data on firearm deaths in counties across the state. And I think that's linked to our dashboard.
Do you see how all this is working? You see the assault we're under right now?
Next presenter is going to be virtual as well as Commissioner Todd Nash. Todd, are you with us?
I am. Thanks, Chair Prozansky. Vice Chair Thatcher, for the record, my name is Todd Nash. I am a commissioner in Wallowa County, Oregon, and I am opposed to the bill as written. My fear is
Thank you.
that the good work that was done with Senate Bill 955 and others will be derailed by this, and the good work done by Oregon State and the cooperators. The reference just to firearm is the offensive part. We have people that are in a point of despair that are leading them to
Thank you.
things that have become lethal to themselves. And I think that's the point that we need to address. I want to bring to your attention something. We had an economic analysis done of a three-forest area here in Northeast Oregon, the Umatilla, the Wallowa Whitman, and the Malheur National Forest, and the 15 counties that are included in that National Forest area. When we looked at the economics of that, we were right behind Mississippi and West Virginia, as if you included us and made us into a state, the third forest state in the Union. It's nothing that I'm proud of, but that's where we're at. And when we talk about the deaths of despair in rural America, that's part of what we're dealing with. The other portion of it is just finding people and finding their place in society and esteeming those individuals, where they live, what they do. We have a culture here where we have guns available almost everywhere, in almost every home that I know of, guns are available. But the suicides here, they come randomly from a lot of different mechanisms. The focus on this one product that we have a major distrust with the Oregon legislature, with the national policies that take place, and the Second Amendment that our young people and old have fought for to maintain. This is a recipe for more distrust, and I wish that any reference at all to firearms was taken out of this, because I could wholeheartedly support it at that point. But as is, I just can't go there. So with that, I respectfully end this.
All right. Commissioner, thank you for your testimony.
Thank
Our
you.
next individual to be testifying is Aaron Riley, who I believe is here.
Oh, here we go.
And Dwight Houghton. Dwight, why don't you come on up as well?
Here comes the dog and pony show.
Aaron, when you're ready, you'll give us your name.
Okay. My name is Erin Riley. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm a wife, a mother, and a retired educator.
Oh, here we go.
My husband, Bob, and I had 2 sons. Our older son, Jeff, is 43 and has autism. We love him and we're proud of him because he lives independently with a roommate in his own apartment and volunteers in our community.
Nice.
We also loved and were proud of our younger son, Daniel. Daniel was a flute player and held first chair in a citywide orchestra. Daniel was smart and funny. He sailed through high school, but he crashed when he got to college. At the end of the first semester, he had failed all his classes. When he should have been on his way home, he was in his dorm room alone, attempting suicide by suffocation. After the attempt failed, the head resident found him and took him to the hospital. Daniel was not hurt physically, but he was ashamed and he was depressed. We welcomed him back home. We insisted he try therapy and possibly medication. He refused the medication, but he did go see several therapists. Each time he would come home and say they hadn't connected. On July 29th, 2010, Daniel took his own life with a handgun. When the sheriff's chaplain told me Daniel had used a gun, I said, that can't be right. We don't have guns. Later, when I looked on Daniel's phone, I saw that he had queried for gun shops at 10:30 in the morning. When I found the receipt for the gun, it said he had purchased the gun at 12:30. By 1 o'clock, he was gone. That's how fast it can happen. We need more barriers between troubled people and guns. My life, Bob's, and Jeff's lives changed forever that day. There's a sadness that we carry with us. When we are together, there's a hole that we're all aware of. We'll never hear Daniel again, but most important, excuse me, I cut some stuff when you said 3 minutes. Most important, we'll never know if he had been prevented from buying a gun that day, if he might have connected with a therapist the next day or the next. After Daniel's death, we sponsored a scholarship at the local community college, and we bought a bench with a plaque in a park near our home. But nothing filled my need to honor his memory until I started speaking out about gun safety. Guns and gun violence
Gun
have become
safety.
a part of all of our lives in America. In Oregon, nearly 80% of gun deaths are suicide. That is a statistic I've determined to change. Every person I speak to learns that the national gun suicide rate is going up, but it's going up higher in states with lax gun laws.
Good comment. Thank you.
That's why we're talking about guns. But the state can and should do more. We're here today to pass this bill so we
Excuse me.
can figure out how to better support people who are dealing and struggling with suicidal thoughts. And so other families don't have to go through the heartbreak that mine did. Thank you. Oh, I'm good.
Thank you.
Bro,
You're hard.
Thank you.
Dwight.
I'm sorry for her loss. I don't enjoy hearing that, but
it
doesn't change the fact that we're looking at the wrong things.
Lines for Life. Lines for Life, as most of you know, is an organization dedicated to preventing substance abuse and promoting mental wellness. We do both crisis intervention and prevention work at Lines for Life. I'm here to offer my unreserved support for SB 1503. Right now, as we sit here, there are 34 call counselors at Lines for Life talking to people all over Oregon who are in crisis. Some are calling because they're actively considering self-harm or suicide. Others are just having a really, really bad day. But our call counselors are there to help them find hope through this worst of days. This is
It's a real thing. It really is. This is a good program.
COVID was an epidemic of our time. Behavioral health crisis and substance abuse and suicide crisis we are going through is the crisis of our generation. It requires, it mandates, we will not get out of it without a concerted, urgent response.
This right here, great comment. Thank you. I'm starring the ones that I like so I can come back to them. That's a great comment. Thank you.
We lose nearly that number to suicide every year. We lost 49,000 in 2022. We lost over 50,000 last year. We'll lose 50,000 this year. We'll lose 50,000 in 2025. And it will continue until we bring the urgency, the collaboration, the insistence on results and effectiveness, and yes, the resources to this generational crisis. Senate Bill 1503 represents a very important step in this direction, I think, by bringing that urgency to bear, by establishing a legislative task force, joined with experts in the field and people with experience. The Suicide Prevention Task Force can help.
Thank you for your service.
Both bring urgency, tear down the silos to collaboration, and demand results. We see some very troubling trends. Suicide rates among Black young men in tribal communities and LGBTQ+ communities are at alarming rates. As Senator Hansel mentioned earlier, we have very substantial suicide rates among in the ranching community here in Oregon. We see incredibly high rates of anxiety in data like the Healthy Teens Survey. But there is good news also. With important investments from the legislature,
good comment,
and the governor, we have seen youth.
Thank you. Really good comment.
In Oregon, and the absolute number of youth suicides in Oregon has gone down 3 years in a row now. And we've fallen from 15th highest in the nation to 22nd highest rate in the nation for youth suicide. So, but now is not the time to take the foot off the gas. The Suicide Prevention Task Force proposed here will focus and lean in to meet the broad demands of this crisis. I mentioned COVID earlier. In some respects, the behavioral crisis is much more complicated because we don't have a vaccine. But there are solutions that work, preventing and addressing.
Thank you, Alicia. That's a great comment.
Supports strategies for firearm safety. That, by the way, lots of the most effective strategies are strategies that can be worked out in collaboration with people in the Second Amendment community. So in some, we're facing a crisis of our generation. I think this task force is an important step to meeting the demands of it.
What they'll try to do is change the Oregon Constitution if they do not get their way. So that's why us getting involved is really, really important. I mean, they know this of the Oregon Constitution. They want to change it.
It will be virtual. But Vanessa, hi, welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to try to do this in 3 minutes. So I'm Vanessa Timmons.
I'm going to just ask you to just turn it. You don't have to bring it up close. It's very sensitive. It just needs to be turned towards you.
Great. Okay. I'm not nervous. So I'm Vanessa Timmons, Executive Director of the Oregon Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. And the coalition has 55 member programs from across the state of Oregon. And I wanted to talk to you about suicide and domestic violence. The Oregon Coalition had a partnership with the Oregon Health Authority and SAMHSA in the July of 2020 to November of 2021. And we had 6 member programs from across Oregon. That was our rural programs, our urban programs, suburban, frontier, and 1 tribal program were involved in this project. And you know, I could tell you the statistics, but I really want to tell you about 2 survivors who didn't survive, who died by suicide, and what brought the coalition into this project with SAMHSA and the Oregon Health Authority. We lost one of our executive directors in rural Oregon. She died by suicide. And the letter that she left talked about overwhelm. It talked about fear. And it talked about unmentioned domestic violence in her life. And that was the first close person to myself that I had lost to suicide. Soon after that, during the pandemic, this is like 18 months apart, these two incidents. One of my staff talked about the survivor that she was working with who drove to the courthouse after a family court event and died by suicide at her own hand at the courthouse in the parking lot. And again, met at that intersection of fear, despair, and domestic and sexual violence. And so those statistics, while they're not all of the survivors that we lose every year, I really like to tell the stories of why we do what we do. So statistically, we have 833 reported suicides in Oregon that year in 2020. Of those, 8 were identified as domestic violence, death by suicide. And that's based on the coalition's fatality report. We know those statistics aren't telling the whole story because we don't have access to all the information of how survivors die by suicide, but that's the statistic we know. We know that 1 in 4 suicides listed intimate partner problems as the stressor associated with the suicide, and that comes from Portland State University's Research Institute. So now I'm nervous about this thing.
Now you're looking at the
So
clock.
what I'm going to say then is that I think it's so important to tell the stories of those who have died by suicide, but it's also important to understand that we don't know as much as we need to know about the intersection of domestic violence and suicide, death by suicide. And so I think this task force is a wonderful starting place. I think we're going to learn a lot, and it's really important. So thank you.
Thank you very much for coming forward and giving your testimony today. Mercedes, are you with us? There she is.
Hello, Chair Pruzansky and members of the committee. My name is Mercedes Solisole, and I'm the Director of Advocacy at Latino Network. For those who don't know, Latino Network was founded in 1996 to support the growing Latinx community. Our programs engage nearly 10,000 community members a year, and we provide direct services to youth and their families in Senate Districts 13 through 15, 19 through 25, and House Districts 25, 26, 28, 29, 37, 40, and 42 through 50. We're here to share some information about the gun violence response portion of this bill, understanding that those who are in deep need of support, who are dealing with fear and complex community needs, also may engage in risky behavior that can cause harm to themselves or others. Latino Network provides entry, diversion, and violence prevention support services for youth, adults, and their families in Multnomah and Washington counties. We have developed a nationally recognized program known as the Community Healing Initiative, or CHI. This program is successful because it is grounded in family healing, mentorship, cultural engagement, and celebration. Far too often, especially in this session, safety is talked about as if it's the same as punishment. More punishment means more safety. But we know at Latino Network that true community safety comes from healing and repair. It comes from community support, maintaining positive behavior change. Real safety comes through self-confidence, self-sufficiency, and all the things that providers like us bring to people and their families to address past harms and trauma. This includes healing trauma.
It's been so bad,
caused by
like literally
behavior
10
and
days.
systematic aggression.
It's not getting better.
It's great to see a task force like this being
Thank you.
proposed that looks at gun violence and self-harm as a public health issue that requires a public health approach. With DOJ engagement on this, we sincerely hope that we're able to maintain a lead with our health-based perspective as we move into this body of work. The legislature needs the best, well-researched, data-driven, culturally specific, tested best practices to align our investments and our strategies with social determinants of health. While the legislature is currently considering abandoning a health-based approach for substance use disorder, opportunities like this bring us back into focus and put us on the right footing to address these issues. We need a comprehensive, committed strategy that prevents gun deaths and keeps our community safe. We want to see this task force get to work right away. Please vote yes on this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. We next have Jorge Sanchez Bautista. And let's see, I believe is also remote. Jorge, are you with us?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Wonderful.
Chair Personsky, Vice Chair Thatcher, and members of the committee. My name is Jorge Sanchez-Batista, and I'm here today to demonstrate my support for Senate Bill 15030. I'm a chapter leader for Students Demand Action, an organization
Here we go.
of young activists committed to ending gun violence in the United States, as well as a youth advisory board member for Oregon Gun Safety Alliance. As we know, the United States currently has a major issue with firearms and gun violence. Even with many laws and policies at the local, state, and federal levels, it's not enough to create change. We continue to see school shootings occur and people in our communities dying due to gun violence. And of course, we shouldn't normalize this as someone doesn't want to hear someone they love has been taken away because of gun violence and firearms. Now, the establishment of the task force on gun violence and suicide prevention won't solve everything, but it'll put Oregon in the right direction. I ask that you consider this important piece of legislation not only for the people of Oregon, but youth such as myself. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your testimony. Our next presenter will be Lee Seavey, and also remote. Lee?
Hi,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Chair and committee members, for taking the time today. My name is Leah Seavey. I currently work at the Oregon Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. In my prior work, I provided
We're getting destroyed here.
survivors of domestic and sexual violence.
Just putting it out there.
Before that, I worked at a DA's office and also as a director of an emergency shelter program in my community. So as an expert in this field, I and my colleagues have seen and heard many horrific incidents, as you can imagine. Suicide isn't one that I expected to have to become so familiar with. To give you some perspective, in my own community, a survivor of domestic violence had been a client of mine, died by suicide after she fled from the situation, being so distraught that she saw no other option than to return to him. So instead, she ended her life. Another suicide involved two teenagers. The boyfriend made a pact with his girlfriend that they would kill themselves together. I knew her because she'd reached out to me to talk about the mental abuse by him. The boyfriend killed himself, and luckily she changed her mind at the last minute. We know that when someone is in trauma, that having community resources available to them,
we're our own worst enemy. We give everybody the platform and the microphone to hang us. That's what we do. So
with that, I want to thank the committee and introducing this task force, and I appreciate the time you've given me. Thank you.
Leah, thank you very much for your testimony. Our next individual will be Katie Harmon, and Katie is remote.
Yeah, hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oof.
Great. Dear Senator Przanski and members of the committee, my name is Katie Harmon. I'm the principal at Roosevelt High School in North Portland, and I'm here to support the creation of the Legislative Task Force on Gun Violence and Suicide Prevention. I've been an educator for 22 years. 18 of those years have been in North Portland as a teacher and a coach and now an administrator. As you know, we closed school because of the COVID pandemic in 2020. And that spring and summer of 2020, we started to see an uptick in gun violence, mostly with adult family members of our students. As student activity started back up, I connected with street level outreach folks who shared their concern about the number of youth with far too easy access to weapons in the community. The summer of 2021, we had our first student murdered by gun violence. We had 3 more students shot during the 2021-22 school year. One was shot at night in our back parking lot, and luckily those 3 students survived. March of 2023, 3 young men were murdered in a neighborhood street in North Portland at 12:30 in the afternoon. They were shot more than 50 times. One of those victims was a Roosevelt student. In August of this year, one of our students was shot 6 times. Again, luckily, he survived. I unfortunately have lost count of the recent graduates who have been murdered or injured by gun violence.
How many were illegal guns?
Disproportionately impacted by these shootings.
How many of them were people without the reason to even have a gun? They weren't old enough.
our students. We have students whose houses are being shot up and their families are trying to relocate to ensure their safety. And just this weekend, we lost another community member to gun violence. For the last 2 years, we have remembered a student at graduation who died by gun violence. They should have been walking across our stage, and instead their families were receiving an honorary diploma. Each of these events is tragic, and the emotional toll on our community, our staff, our students, our parents just keeps adding up. Students, staff, and community members ask what we can do, and we just aren't sure. We don't really know, and each time someone is killed or injured, it re-traumatizes our community. Our school counselors, our social workers, and other student supports are regularly working with students and families who are impacted by gun violence. The secondary trauma they experience weighs on them and affects their mental health. There are too many guns out there, and kids have far too easy access. And I say kids because they're kids. They are 12, 13, and 14-year-old students.
Prosecute gun crimes.
And videos on social media.
It's really that simple. You arrest them, detain them, prosecute.
These two things are
Get them off the street.
and are creating a very concerning condition for teenagers to navigate. Guns are in our communities and in the hands of youth. Without intervention, these guns will move through our schools and communities and continue to cause devastating consequences for our kids, schools, teachers, and community. I'm advocating for the creation of the legislative task force. We need to address the current realities of our post-pandemic world. We need to prioritize long-term committed solutions that make an impact. And we need to research what's working and to understand the complexities of gun violence and suicide prevention. Thanks.
All right, thank you for your testimony. We're now going to go to William Miller, who I believe is, William, are you here? It looks like it says in person. I do not see William. We'll come back to that. Mr. Terry Long. Mr. Long, I believe you're remote. I do not see initials there, so I'll call out Terry Long one more time. We'll come back and call through again. Whitley Sullivan.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon.
Chair Pazansky, Vice Chair Thatcher, and members of the committee. My name is Whitley Sullivan, and I am testifying today on behalf of the National Shooting Sports Foundation in opposition to Senate Bill 1503.
Thank you.
I think firstly, let us acknowledge that the stark reality is that half of all suicides involve a firearm and that the presence of a gun in a household significantly elevates the risk of suicide by firearm. I'm not here today to argue against the merits of this bill, but to highlight a missing component to the task force that we believe will increase Senate Bill 1503's chance for success in the real world. There are 13 subject matter experts included on this task force in the -3 amendment, but not one of those subject matter experts comes from a firearm consumer background. Consumer advocates bring to the table an in-depth understanding of firearm safety, ownership, and the community that surrounds gun culture. Their expertise is crucial in crafting strategies that respect the rights of gun owners while addressing the dire need for suicide prevention. Incorporating a consumer advocate into the Suicide Prevention Task Force enables the development of practical, effective interventions that gun owners can support and implement. Initiatives such as safe storage campaigns and voluntary waiting periods have shown promise in reducing suicide rates. These measures, advocated for and implemented with the support of consumer advocates, demonstrate how collaboration can lead to impactful outcomes. Moreover, consumer advocates can help tailor messaging and educational programs that resonate with firearm owners, fostering a culture of safety and responsibility. Their engagement ensures that prevention measures are not perceived as infringements on personal freedoms, but as community-driven efforts to save lives. NSSF is a strong advocate for suicide prevention. In fact, we're partnered with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention with the goal to reduce the annual suicide rate by providing resources for retailers and ranges for both consumers and employees. We believe that the integration of a consumer advocate into the Suicide Prevention Task Force is not merely beneficial. It's a critical bridge between gun rights and public health advocacy. Furthermore, we fear that without a balance of backgrounds on this task force, Senate Bill 1503 will fail to decrease the rate of suicide in our communities and instead result in recommendations that focus solely on reducing the ability for Oregonians to acquire firearms instead of focusing on ensuring that Oregonians who struggle with mental health receive the support they need. We look forward to working together on decreasing the rate of suicide in our communities. Thank you for your time today.
All right. Whitney,
She
thank you.
forgot to mention how they support red
Next
flag laws.
individual Is, Carrie.
I wasn't going to interrupt though.
Spurgeon. Carrie?
Come on, Carrie. This is our guy.
There. I'd like to thank Whitney for her testimony. It was spot on. My name is Carrie Spurgeon. I'm the president of the Oregon State Shooting Association. Chair Przansky, Vice Chair Thatcher, and committee. Over the last 3 years, the Oregon State Shooting Association has sponsored and driven key actions for awareness, education, training, working with NSSF, working with the American Foundation for Prevention of Suicide. Through an outstanding partnership with our county health organizations, we've connected expertise and resources to address true root causes to our suicide problem in over half of our Oregon counties. This expert and knowledge gained from the Oregon Alliance to Prevent Suicide, which is also a publicly funded Oregon organization. We brought methods and tools to help Oregon citizens in the root causes of suicide. Senate Bill 1503's initiation has been very dynamic due to lack of engagement with experts prior to the launch. I commend those focusing on root causes, not the tools that force us into this tragedy. If you want to change, we need to focus on the drivers. 1503 needs to grab the expertise already gained in Oregon, if it is to pass, but it must seek to understand those current programs. One of my issues with the task force is that it combines two very unrelated items. The gun violence in our community is a priority, as it should be. We should ask directly of law enforcement and Department of Justice to report to legislature on what is needed to curb. We need to help them. We need to give them what they need. Enforcing current laws and being firm on crime is key. If suicide prevention is our community, which has been my priority, if suicide prevention in our community is a priority, which it has been for me, we need to look closer at the existing work that's been done by the Oregon Alliance to Prevent Suicide and our partners at OHA. We need to help them, fund them with the actions that they desire. Help them because that is what I do as well. These are very separate topics. They have very different solution spaces. We have crime, we have violence that is unlawful, and then we have clear mental health issues, the overwhelming situations and personal crisis. We need to solve them separately because they're in separate spaces. Combining them is like combining Israel, Ukraine, and border funding into one bill. That's a good chance. That's a good way to get nothing done. Lastly, I would like you to make time for addressing House Bill 4096, which implements the creating of time and distance, which is a known best method in preventing suicide. 4096, with the removal of section 13BA and 2, would be a good first step. In general, I'm opposed to 1503 as it's written, but they should be separated into separate pieces for separate focus. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments.
So I want to see some data that supports this position right here.
Dino?
That good people are buying guns for the cartel. Please explain that. I don't buy that.
I do not see any issues with Kai. Let's go down to our next scheduled individual is Douglas Prominsky. Douglas? Again, I do not see any initials on the virtual screen. How about Mr. John Bloom?
John Bloom.
John?
That's my
going down the list.
Fast and Furious.
Donald Pierre check. next is Candy Yo,
Hey, Candy.
YOW,
Come on, Candy.
and not seeing anyone. I am going to go through then we also have, it looks like Jen Fraga. Jen, please come up.
On Judiciary. My name is Jen Fraga. I am the Suicide Prevention Program Coordinator with the Oregon Alliance to Prevent Suicide. And I also have personal lived experience as an attempt survivor, and I'm currently working in an intensive outpatient program pursuing my licensure, so just the different hats that I'm bringing to the table. I'm here to testify on behalf of the Oregon Alliance to Prevent Suicide. We are a statewide advisory group to Oregon Health Authority and advise on all matters related to youth and young adult suicide. We're interested in the possibility of the task force that this bill and the -3 amendment proposes because of the potential for a coordinated and cross-sector effort that can help reduce obstacles and increase supports for those in crisis. We do have some recommendations that we hope you will consider for additional amendments that would lay a foundation of success for this task force and to make sure that it doesn't operate in isolation. Expanding the membership in the -3 amendment to include a position for a person with lived experience with community safety threats or suicidal ideation is an important step to ensure the work of the task force is informed with relevant lived experience. However, we think it's important to not combine those two very different types of experiences so that both can be represented on a task force that's going to look at community safety and firearm suicide prevention. We believe that by having representation from multiple lenses, the task force can better capture the spectrum of experiences they're looking to impact. Specifically, we recommend that the following positions should be included in the membership: person with lived experience of suicidal ideation, person who identifies as a suicide by firearm loss survivor, and representation from communities of color who are disproportionately impacted by firearm deaths. In addition to these specific lived experience positions, we also think that it would be extremely helpful to have representation from the Alliance, as we are currently the only legislatively enacted advisory group in the state on issues related to suicide. Lastly, in regards to line 7 on
100%
of the -3 amendment, we don't think that membership should be limited to
Or
psychologists who work with youth,
stolen
but instead
guns.
being expanded to have representation from a behavioral health provider who works with youth. Clarification on what research the task force will be focusing on is extremely helpful when thinking of the scope of work they'll be assigned. And we want to acknowledge the existing efforts on suicide prevention research and gun violence research across the state. We hope that the task force will really coordinate with existing efforts so as not to duplicate work, not restart the wheel, and to ensure that funding will be spent appropriately. It's also important to identify what the research will be used for. How does this meet a very urgent need to do something that addresses firearms-related suicide prevention? As data shows, firearms, specifically handguns, are the #1 means used for suicide deaths. In 2022 alone, 72% of firearm-related deaths were suicides, with an even higher percentage in rural areas of Oregon. The Alliance has been working with Representative Tran and Senator Boquist on House Bill 4096, which Carrie previously mentioned, and believe that this would significantly improve access to temporarily off-site storage for folks experiencing crises, including suicidal ideation. And we believe that a both-and approach would help Oregonians. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Then
do the list one more time for those who
then
did not
prevent
respond.
then
William Miller,
put the link so we can see it. I'm not familiar with this
Terry Long,
documentary.
I found some
Hi,
web
Dino.
results. I can show.
Stop.
Douglas Prominski, John Bloom.
And it's, I guarantee it's not. It's who made the documentary? Is it somebody that's anti-gun? I mean, that's going to influence the information they put in the documentary. So,
Andy Wild.
I mean,
All right, that is all that we had signed up that wanted to give testimony. I am going to make, I guess, this general announcement.
Oh.
For those who have not signed up, who
interesting.
want to give testimony, or those who did sign up and were not
I
available
did see a
at this
guy
time,
on that
please
show
remember that written testimony will be accepted into the portal
that
for
did
this
documentaries
meeting.
with the cartel. So
This is found
I
in the
apologize.
Oregon
Maybe I
Legislative
misspoke, but
Information System, what we refer to
I'd
as
like to
POLIS.
dive
And
into that deeper.
Testimony can be submitted anytime up until 1 p.m. to Friday, which will be 2 days from today, which will be Friday the 9th, February at 1 p.m. Colleagues, that's all we have scheduled for today on our agenda. And so with that, we will go ahead and close the public hearing on Senate Bill 1503. And we will adjourn until tomorrow at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Give me 1 second here. Let me get back into. Wow, that was a lot. So you see what we're up against now. So it's all in front of you. You guys kind of saw how the sausage was made today. They made a lot of sausage out of us, is what they did. And so I feel, we could have done better being there in person or signing up online. Part of it is my fault because I'm just kind of discounting this because I know it's not effective and I know it's a waste of money. I know it's a waste of resources, but I feel that if they're going to use resources in this manner, this is going to prevent them from coming after our magazine capacities or permit to purchase. So I'm saying, let's let them be busy doing this, right? So maybe part of this is my fault because I didn't have a sense of urgency in my voice. And so, I feel like we lost. Like this is a big fat L. And only thing we get is we got 48 hours to pack testimony saying that this is not a good move for the state of Oregon. That's the only way we're gonna be able to right this ship. And so that's where I think now you guys saw what I see typically when or Alicia sees. This is what we see when we testify, when we are in these meetings, when we watch them online. This is what it looks like. And I tried not to interrupt because I don't want to interrupt because I want you to hear the terminology that they use. I want you to hear the things that they're going to use against you so you can be better and help make you a more effective advocate here, right? Is we have to learn from our adversaries. I'm very big believer, rules for radicals, Saul Alinsky, understanding how the other side operates. That way I can tailor the message or know where they're going with the conversation so I can be in front of it. That way I can be offensive as opposed to defensive. That's the benefit of us all watching this hour-long hearing today, which was very, very painful. I want to be very, very clear. None of us want to see anybody lose their life. And, we carry a gun every day. We have guns in our home because they serve a purpose. They're for protection. They're to protect ourselves, our families, the public, if we're in public and we're carrying concealed. So we have a vested interest in lives being saved, but this is not the way to do it. And we all know this. Coming a couple of the comments I say, I'll start going through the comments. There were some really great comments. I really appreciate you guys, being a part of this. And this is my first time doing it like this. And it was hard to watch. And it was hard to keep my mouth shut. It really was because I wanted to fire back but I didn't want to take away from the hearing. And I didn't feel that it was a good use of my time or your time. And so that's why I'm going to do a real brief because I don't want to take too much more of your time. Because I got stuff I got to do too, but we can learn a lot from the people that oppose or that are in support of this bill, right? So the common theme was gun violence. That's their biggest thing. Their talking points is children. They, you noticed how they had all of the little boxes checked when it talks about DEI, right? So they had every ethnic group covered. I mean, this is what the pro anti-gun movement does. They put all these different places in the hearings to have the greatest emotional impact on that committee. And to be honest with you, we had three or four on our side. And that wasn't a lot of it because I don't feel good. And I didn't feel comfortable getting into this situation the way because I didn't want to have a coughing fit. I feel like crap, and I apologize for that. But I did my part. I wrote my testimony, and so I just feel that I will I'm going to learn from this and get better. And as all of us, I hope we do. So, it just that was a kick in the gut. That's the way I feel. And they're definitely two separate issues. Two separate issues. I highly agree with that comment. And, and I feel like they're hijacking the gun violence and inserting suicide as a way, because they can use these emotional arguments about how that lady that lost her son, and like, I'm sorry she lost her son, that's horrible, but the fact that he committed suicide, tried to commit suicide once, and you didn't do what you needed to do to get him help, or he refused help, like, the gun was just the avenue that he chose. I mean, it could have been a sitting inside the garage letting the vehicle idle. It could have been something else. It could have been OD. So that he was obviously feeling isolated and alone and detached, and that nobody cared, and so that's why he went down that path. And I'm sorry he did. But like, what you're doing now is not going to help this situation for someone else. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I hope everybody have any other comments, concerns. So, that's kind of where I'm at, and I appreciate Alicia being here, bringing in the mental health aspect. I appreciate her life experiences in this situation, because they're very relevant to what we just saw, right? Is we have that voice that has a different life experience for the ones that they proposed in this hearing. So, we got to boost up her signal as well. And I wish she would have testified. But it is what it is. I mean, we just got to move on. The next step is we got to watch this, and I'll keep you guys posted. Is this going to get scheduled for a work session? That's going to be the next step. So I'm going to be watching that. I already have emails out to my contacts up there, like what the status of this is, because I feel the way it went, they're automatically going to assign it a work session, and that's going to be by Monday. They're going to have that scheduled. And so it's just something to think about. We got 48 hours. Okay. We have until 1 p.m. on Friday to pack the testimony and written testimony. And so that's where this is our focus now, is we have to fire up those computers. We can use AI. There's all these different techniques that we can do, and so just something to think about, is now it's time to hit the accelerator. We saw their case, what they presented, we lost. Okay. So now it's time for us to hammer down and go to work and make sure that we say no more. Okay. So if now you hear the urgency in my voice, now I know they played their hand. We're playing poker here. They played their hand. Okay. So I know what they're going. I know what they're going to talk about. I know their concerns. Okay. So now I need to cater my messaging when I'm submitting testimony. This is the way we have to do it. Make sure when we're submitting testimony, though, is you click the in opposition box. Okay. There's 3 boxes. It'll give you an option for if you're in support of it. It's going to give you an option if it's going to give you an option. It's also going to give you an option if you're in opposition. Make sure you click the opposition button, because we want to make sure that we run up those numbers. We need to get 1,000 people, at least 1,000 people. We have to smash their numbers. Okay. So if you guys can do me a solid here, and I saw the property safety bill, the property tax bill, pretty generic. There's way that they could put the funding in there. You never know with the property tax bill, which Kyle, thanks for putting that in here. Is what if they put funding in there for Measure 114 implementation? They know it's going to cost them $50 million a year to run that program for the permit to purchase. So what if they earmarked something where, $40 million of that budget for the property tax bill goes into the Oregon State Police coffers so they can implement Measure 114. So don't think for a second, okay, that we're out of the woods here. So there's a lot of things they can do, and they will do it. So I just want to, make sure that we're all on the knowing what's happening. So I'm going to get off here. If you guys have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. The only thing I ask, okay, and I know there's not many people turning in. I appreciate all the people that watch this with me, is we have 48 hours. 48 hours to submit testimony. So it literally doesn't have to take much. You could spend 10 to 15 minutes, just write testimony. It's really, really important. I can't stress that enough. So, you know, we're, you know, we're in this together. We're going to win together. We're going to lose together. And I'm sick of losing. I don't know how much left to lose. So, that's kind of where I'm at. So, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to get off here. If you guys have any questions, just make sure 1:00 on Friday is the deadline. Submit testimony. I'll put up another link. I'll make an image, and I'll make it flashy so you know where to go to make it as easy as I can, because I really need your help and your neighbors need your help. We cannot let these radicals control our ability to defend ourselves and our families. This is just a workaround to further restrict your rights. And the sooner that we realize that, the sooner that we get involved and we stop this stuff, the more effective we're going to be going into the future. So that's all I can say. So thank you guys for joining my TED Talk here today. I'm glad we watched it together. I'm sorry it was hard to watch. So, but Prozansky already has his mind made up. They're just going through the motions at this point. They're just checking the boxes, and they are going to see this thing through unless we stop it. Okay. So it's on us to stop this. So, 1:00 on Friday, deadline. So I'll get you the information you need. Help us out. So I want to smash the other side. I want to see 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, because they see that many in opposition. They're going to say, we're going to slow them down. It's always going to be hard to watch. Absolutely, Randy. It's hard to watch. You know what's hard? Hardest part is it's hard to be silent. Okay. Because they lie. Okay. And that lie gets told enough times, it becomes the truth. And now it's part of the public record. And so now this lie is now a valid claim. And so that's the hardest part is we know the truth. We're not the problem. There's guns issues in our state, but it's because of bad policy that's allowed all of this stuff to happen. So, and we just got to keep fighting. So we're all in this together. Let's win. Okay. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Yeah, they will never quit. Look at it. They got the next generation involved. They have the next generation. Okay. They have the next generation. And that's why I dedicate my life to protecting kids and teaching kids civics and teaching them about our 2A rights, because our 2A rights are literally less than a generation from being gone. So, that's where I'm at. So, that's why I've been putting stuff that I'm doing with the kids in the group. It helps me get the attention that I need. Hopefully I can get the help that I need. But we have to understand is you have my group and then you have their group. Okay. And if we're weighing the scales, right, of liberty, there's only one group that's doing the work, and that's my group. Okay. And I'm going to bet on my group every time, because my group's righteous. And I believe in my cause. So that's where I'm at. So other than that, I'm going to get back to being sick, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.